This lesson is being recorded not in front of the class because we had some technical issues today. So I will go through it fairly quickly. Remember, you can pause the video at any time. In the last lesson, what was mostly a review for you because you had this in pre-algebra was solving the most basic equations that you only needed 1 or 2 steps to isolate the variable. This time we're going to solve multi-step equations, which means it'll be more than 2 steps. What it won't be, because that's what we do in the next lesson, is an equation that has variables on both sides, right? So this is the first example of an equation that will need multi-steps, meaning more than 2 steps to solve. And you can see from the expression on the left side of the equal sign that there are like terms, that is, terms with the same variable raised to the same power, which means they can be combined. And 8x minus 3x, again, you combine them by combining the coefficients. So 8 minus 3 would be 5x. Now with that one step, we just turn that into a 2-step equation. So now we're doing like we did in the homework last night. So we will finish this off by adding 10. And now we have 5x equals 30. And then we will divide both sides by 5. X equals 6. Now remember, you can check your answer. I mean, it's not absolutely necessary, but it's not a bad idea. And I show it. When I show it to you, I'm showing it to you for one reason, is I want to make sure we understand the properties that are involved. If I plug in x equals 6 into this original equation here, I get 8 times 6 minus 3 times 6 minus 10 equals 20. Now since I'm checking, I don't really know if this is true, but that's what I'm hoping will be true. So I'll put a question mark over the equal sign. All right, now I can simplify. 8 times 6 is 48. 3 times 6 is 18. And that is still question mark equal to 20. Okay, 48 minus 18 is 30. And last step, 20 equals 20. And that I do not need a question mark next to. Check. And that is actually a property of ours. That is called the reflexive property of equality, when you get to that step where a number equals itself. And we are required to know the reflexive property of equality. Right? That is reflexive property. So here's your U-try. Pause the video. And when you're done, hit play and you will see me work it out. 9d minus 2d, 7d plus 4 equals 32. Minus 4 minus 4. 7d equals 28. 7d divided by 7 equals 28 divided by 7. D equals 4. So we combine like terms. We subtracted the same thing from both sides of the equation. That's called the subtraction property of equality. We divided both sides of the equation by the same thing. That's called division property of equality. And our answer is 4, and you can plug that in and check it out. This problem is one step more complicated because we actually have a distributive property to do as a first step. So we'll do that. Don't forget to multiply both terms in parentheses by the coefficient 2. Combine like terms. And so it took us 2 steps to get down to a 2-step equation. So this is going to be a total of 4 steps. And last 2 steps to isolate the variable, subtract 12 from both sides. 9x equals 27. Divide by 9. So x equals 3. So you try this next one. Again, now would be the time to pause the video, hit play when you're done. Distribute. 2w plus 3w plus 12 equals 27. 2w plus 3w is 5w. Subtract 12. 5w equals 15. And last step, divide both sides by 5. W equals 3. Right, this work that I'm showing is about the level of work that I would expect you to show on your homework, on quizzes, and on tests. You know, I'm not interested in answers that you can just use mental math to figure out. This is not about the answers, it's about the process. Because as we go higher in algebra, it's not so easy to use mental math, and we need to be really good with these processes. Right, this problem is different because we are multiplying the entire left-hand side by a fraction. So we have to remember, and this really comes from the homework last night, what do you do to get rid of a fraction which is multiplying? You could say, I'll divide by a fraction, divide both sides by 3/2. But if you divide both sides by 3/2, then you'd have to decide, well, how do I divide by a fraction? And what we do is we turn it into a multiplication. We flip and multiply by the reciprocal. So really that's what we should do as a first step. Instead of going through the step of dividing by 3/2 and then having to turn it into a multiplication, just multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So this is going to look like 2/3 times 3/2 times 3x plus 5 equals 2/3 times negative 24. Again, when you multiply 2/3 times 3/2, they cancel each other out. I mean, you get 1/1. Now, make note that the parentheses around 3x plus 5 no longer serve any purpose, right? They're not changing the order of operations, so you should just lose them. Don't get stuck wondering what to do with parentheses. If they're not serving any purpose, then they can go away. Okay, now we can multiply 2/3 times negative 24, by putting negative 24 over 1. But much preferable is to recognize that 3 goes into 24 8 times. So this is negative, because there's still the negative there. 2 times 8, negative 16. So remember this step. If you have a fraction that's multiplying, to get rid of it, you multiply by the reciprocal. And I really didn't mean to put that in there. Just subtract 5 from both sides. 3x equals negative 21. Divide by 3. Okay, so this will be your you try. Go ahead and hit pause. And when you're done, hit the play button. Remember, your first step is going to be multiplying by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal of a negative is a negative. So go ahead and hit pause and try to work it out. All right, this should be negative 5/4 times negative 4/5 times 4a minus 1 equals negative 5/4. Right, got to multiply both sides times the same thing, times 28. Right, the negative times the negative is positive, and everything else cancels. So again, we multiply by the reciprocal because when you multiply a number times its reciprocal, you get 1, and 1 times anything is that same thing. Okay, now 4 goes into 28 7 times. Negative 5 times 7 is negative 35. Now we have a two-step equation, no more fractions. Add 1, add 1. 4a equals negative 34. Divide 4. That was a mistake. Now, negative 34 over 4, there's a common factor, 2. They're both even numbers. If you divide out the 2, we're going to get a equals negative 17 divided by 2. And you can leave it like that. A lot of students in class wrote it as negative 8.5, and that's certainly correct. Okay, either one is fine. Usually in algebra, you know, we're comfortable using improper fractions. We rarely convert them into mixed numbers. Now these last examples here, really, I'm just going to show one because it's in the homework like this too. These are the even number problems close to the odd number problems that I'm asking you to do. And notice that they have decimals. Now, I know that a lot of students will just choose to solve these with the decimals in place, no problem, and you'll get it right, and I don't have any problem with that at all. But there is a step you could take to get rid of the decimals if you don't want to work with decimals, and that would be to multiply by a power of 10 that moves the decimal place over as much as you need it moved over. So for example, all of these problems here, the decimals are one place to the right of the decimal point, which means it's tenths, right? And if you want to move a decimal place over, if you want to move a decimal place over once, then just a second, I want to make sure that if you want to move a decimal place over once, you would multiply by 10, right? So let me do number 30. Okay, if I multiply everything on this line times 10, okay, now I'm going to get 10 times 1.6 equals 10 times 7.6 minus 5 times 10 times k plus 1.1. Now I put that 10 there. It doesn't matter if I put it on the outside or on the inside. But, you know, ultimately the decimal point that I'm trying to move over is inside. So I'm going to distribute the 10. I'm going to distribute the 10. First, this one will be 16 when you move it over, decimal place over once. This one will be 76, decimal place over once. This will be minus 5 times, and then inside parentheses will be 10k plus 11. So by taking that step, I don't have to deal with decimals anymore. Again, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. But it's something that there's a reason why they put these problems with decimals in there. It's to take this step. Okay, let me solve this. Remember, you cannot do 76 minus 5. That's an order of operations problem. We're going to do distributive property. 76 minus 50k minus 55. We're going to combine like terms. 76 minus 55, that'll give us 76 equals 21 minus 50k. We'll subtract 21. And now I've got negative 5 equals negative 50k. Divide both sides by negative 50. Right? Negative 5 divided by negative 50 equals negative 50k divided by negative 50. And these cancel. And negative 5 over negative 50, the negatives cancel, and 5 over 50 is 1/10. And remember, you can write 1/10 equals k, or you can write k equals 1/10. And that's a property in and of itself, right? That property is called symmetric property, right? When you switch what's on the left side with what's on the right side, that's called symmetric property. So I'm not going to do the next two because it really proved the same point. Was you can multiply by a power of 10 to get rid of decimals if you want. Right, spot the errors. And this might be where you pause, see if you can find the errors, and when you think you found the errors, then go ahead and hit play. In this case, the error is when you distribute negative 3, it should have made negative 3 times negative 6 plus 18. Right, that's the error. And what happened here? I mean, somehow from the first line to the second line, there's no more 1/2. Well, what do you have to do to get rid of a 1/2, which is multiplying? Right? You have to multiply both sides times 2. So clearly they multiplied this side times 2. But the right-hand side went from 4 to 2. It's actually divided by 2, not multiplied by 2. It should have been times 2, which would have made that 8, right? All right, so that was it. And that was the whole lesson. The homework is here. And not much else to say. Next time we will do solving equations with variables on both sides.